Good morning, Gardenia. Good morning, Internet. Thank you for joining us today on Adam versus the Man. We've got, again, every show on this production is a special episode. But today, no, it's not especially special. Just a little bit unusual. We've got Comment Jim Freedom filling in for producer CJ from Phoenix because producer CJ is working on some other projects building out the distribution strategy for Adam versus the Man. We got a big block about the virus which shall not be named. Yeah, Kat, finally. It's been weeks. It's been weeks since you've heard me rant about the virus. It's almost like it doesn't exist anymore. It's not a well, no, if you've been going anywhere other than living under your rock, man, we still are living in the middle of what looks like a kind of zombie apocalypse. And I'll point this out because it is worth noting that I can't remember where I heard this the other day, but I think it was in one of our comments. Someone said, look, I've always been the guy who didn't go along to get along. I've always been the one who stood out. I've always been the libertarian. I've always been the resistor. It's just now when all you statist sucker bootlickers put masks on your face, now you can tell who I am. Now you can see my smile. And it might be that I'm the only one you see smiling when you go to Walmart, and I'm the only guy there not wearing a mask. And now, man, triple masks? Yeah, I'm not making that up. That's the headline. That's the recommendation of the experts today. So we've got, we're going to get a quick production note in here from CJ in just a minute. We've got the Silk Road movie trailer is out. The Ross Ulbricht murder mystery designed to further set him up as in order to justify what he is serving as an inhumane double life sentence for victimless crimes. It is truly a shame. But hey, I'm in it. I only know this came out today. I was on Twitter this morning. Someone tweeted at me, hey, check out the new Silk Road movie trailers. You know that you're in it. And it's funny because I didn't show up in my Google alerts or anything. Like, they just, it was when I was ordering DMT. And by the way, do I have to put a disclaimer on we're on YouTube. We're back on YouTube, by the way. We're going to be playing the Silk Road trailer from YouTube, back on the main channel, youtube.com/Adam Kokesh. So thank you to everybody who's joined us there live. We are looking to at least get back into this. Our strikes are expired. We are back in the good graces of Google, sort of, ever. But we recently noticed that while we were gone for our little honeymoon winter break here, that we got 6 million more views on this YouTube channel, and almost all of them are one video, my most viewed video. First one I ever posted to YouTube is me telling a joke in a fighting hole. So you can, I don't know if you're watching this live on YouTube, yeah. Take 30 seconds while I ramble and do the intros and the promos. Come back for the COVID. The virus, which shall not be named. So, but we're still not getting the revenue. And it's really weird, really, this kind of emotional temptation I've got now to be like, well, YouTube is being nice to us today. We have a chance at rebuilding the YouTube channel no. It's like an abusive spouse being nice for one evening and trying to pretend like they never did anything wrong. So let's not get too caught up with YouTube being nice. But without further ado, let's see if we can get CJ up here. CJ is calling in because he's not producing the show today. He's working on some other reorganization stuff. Now he's having phone issues. All right, so CJ, Jim, let me know whenever CJ's ready, or someone put it in the Telegram group. Speaking of which, this really is the backbone of the show. Wait, did I finish all my open sidebars there? Did I come back? This is how I think. Get on one train of thought, sidebar to the sidebar to the sidebar, and then you got to come back and close all the thoughts and and then get back to the main train of thought of Adam versus the Man. And I do that. If you ever catch me in the comments and you go, Adam, you told half a story and then ranted about boxers versus briefs for 20 minutes, and then your show was over. We wanted this. Fair enough. It's going to happen. And the Producers Club, being the backbone of the show, is just a miracle of modern media, independent media, because we require an active and engaged audience to do what we do, and it's really the Producers Club that drives us. We have a Telegram chat, and yeah, I'm also compiling a block right now on internet censorship and social media platform manipulation. And man, we're gonna get into that tomorrow. We're gonna get into our international news block tomorrow. Believe it or not, there is a world outside of the bubble of the United States of America. This great nationalist conversation that we have. But let's get producer Jim up on screen here to tell us about the Producers Club. Comment Jim Freedom as producer Jim Freedom on this lovely Wednesday morning. How you doing today, brother?
What's going on? How you doing?
Another beautiful snowy day in Gardena. It's not snowing; it's relatively clear out, but man, we've still got, I don't know, about 8 inches of snow on the ground. It's beautiful.
I saw some of your pictures from yesterday. This, just so you know, this was down in Phoenix yesterday.
What?
That was
No,
in my backyard yesterday. I swear to you, there
no.
was snow drift piled up. Everybody here is calling it hail, but the hail piled up and looked white to me. That's when I transferred over to snow. It snowed here in Phoenix
Okay.
the other day. I think it was 2 days ago now, but
Yeah,
whatever.
when hell
It was
freezes.
it was enough that I was like, whoa, whoa, what the hell is that? What is going on right now? It was on the trampoline. It was everywhere. Not nearly like you got it though. I took some screenshots
We got it.
to tease other people. This is Gardenia right now. This is from your live stream the other day,
Oh,
so
geez.
people
Yeah.
can
Well,
see
I
what they're
like
dealing with.
I like sending people to our Instagram. I got a lot of photos I gotta post just to catch up. So many cool winter shots here. Trees, dogs, cats playing in the snow. Well, the trees aren't playing in the snow, but the dogs and the cats are playing in the snow. And I like being able to. I'm like, oh shit, he's posting screenshots. I got to get my carefully curated, edited photos up on the Garden of Freedom Instagram. So check it out, Instagram at the Garden of Freedom. But Jim, why don't you tell us about the Producers Club and how people can join today?
Okay, well, the Producers Club is awesome. I love it. We were just using it right now. That's how CJ is communicating with us, even though he's not on because his phone crashed. To join that, you can make your way to adamversustheman.com, like on the bottom of the screen. And once you're there, there's a Patreon link. You click that Patreon, it brings you to this page, and you can pick any number of monthly support donations. But $10 a month is really where it's at. That's what'll get you into the Producers Club. And so you can share links with us, that stories that you think should be on the show. You can share your opinion about things. There's a subgroup called the Bullshitters Anonymous where you can share your funny memes, and it's just a cool group that everybody can join through that. Or you can win membership when we do one of our contests. I don't
Or
know if
just say
I
something
don't think we
awesome.
have one.
Just
Or
say
just
something
say something.
awesome.
Yeah,
Have the
if you
best
make
comment of the
Adam, if
day.
you blow Adam's mind in the comments or anything, then and you inspire him to say, you know what, get that person in the Producers Club, then that's a way to get in. But if you don't want to wait for that to happen, or you're not witty enough to come up with something super unique and amazing to make Adam say that, then you can go to Patreon and give us $10 a month. That's the easy way to get in. After that, you can visit the store that executive producer CJ has put together. He's got tons of stuff on here, right on the AdamVersusTheMan.com website. Everything from backpacks and beanies and towels to underwear, everything with the Freedom logo on it or the Adam versus the Man logo on it. If we contact producer at thefreedomline.com and ask him if you could get something personalized, that's a possibility as well. So don't be afraid to reach out and explore your options there. One more thing we want to promote is the Cigar Federation. This is where Adam goes to get his cigar smoking delicacies. They got flavors that you never even thought of. They got a huge website. I couldn't possibly show you all of it here on this little advertisement. So you're going to have to visit cigarfederation.com and check out all their different flavors. If you're a cigar smoker, that's the website for you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Jim. Now, before we get to our news, do you want to play this Silk Road trailer? Let's do that. You see that's the third link in the list. So I want while I got you on screen, and this is a kind of a thought provoking one. It's actually a good setup for our couple news stories we're going to do before the COVID block today. So, Jim, you got that pulled up? Let's roll tape. Oh, no, I'm frozen.
You look stressed.
Why do you keep closing your laptop every time I walk by?
You look stressed.
Open this door!
Work's been crazy. I've always wanted to change the world.
How?
Amazon for drugs.
But you can't buy drugs on the internet.
What if you could? Using Bitcoin. I just made 75 grand in the last 90 minutes, babe.
That's 1.2 million a day.
This guy's the first millennial gangster.
You gonna crack this the old-fashioned way, Agent Bowden?
Everything they know, they learned off a screen. Not staring down the barrel of a gun. Experience matters.
Oh! When you snatch him up, send me a fax.
The dark net.
Something special came in the mail.
The game's changing. It's gonna be every suburb in America.
This website needs to be shut down immediately.
Down the ground!
I'm the one that's gonna bring this brick down.
You cross this line, there ain't no going back.
You're getting obsessive.
We get him on conspiracy to commit murder. Checkmate.
Come on, hold your breath.
What you do with my money? This thing is gonna outlive all of us.
That was pretty awesome, man. And I'd also like to point out, you saw in there, right? You saw the cameo in there. That's the official movie right there.
Well, first of all, so there's a pretty big concern here among people who appreciate freedom and understand that Ross Ulbricht is a hero, that this movie, Hollywood's portrayal of the Ross Ulbricht story might not be exactly fair. And of course, there's going to be a certain sensationalism. But can we count on Hollywood when they come out with this big story into the mainstream and movie format for the first time to tell a story of government getting it wrong and Ross being innocent? No. And you do see that it seems like in the trailer, the DEA agent on the case was actually just setting him up on the attempted murder or murder for hire, and this is, there's so many problems with their case, and I guarantee you they're not going to show exactly how that he was just railroaded through all of this legally, and they're not going to show that the FBI agents on the case stole hundreds of, I think it was in the hundreds of thousands of dollars of Bitcoin, if not millions, associated with the Silk Road. There's so many problems with this movie coming on, the way the story is being told. And it's better for it to be told than not. And if they come out and, and it's funny, Jim, did you ever think I would be in a movie with Chuck Schumer like that? And it's like a fictionalized movie. And then you got the real life clips of me and Democrat Senator Chuck Schumer. I think like they actually asked me, the movie makers, about this footage, and we had a bit of an email back and forth. I think this is a group I had a conference call with. There have been several different production companies that have asked to use my footage regarding the Silk Road, and one of them was just my how-to video, but that's not on YouTube anymore, and that's me like in a suit, looking professional with a bong on the desk in the old Adam versus the Man studios in Virginia, the big basement one, and you know, they've got me instead, and you know, with my head shaved and the goofy ass long goatee. I look like, I gotta say, like I look kind of like a junkie in that clip. Not that I wasn't. I still look healthy, but stylistically, it was a weird. It wasn't the '80s, but it was a weird time for me. And then when I saw this clip this morning, I was like, oh, well. Yeah, they're not going to reveal their hand. They're not going to show their editorial conclusions about Ross Ulbricht in a trailer like this. But there is a certain demonization that's happening with this that's disturbing. Jim, did you have any thoughts on it? Let's go to the audience. Any comments on this today? And we are going to get to we have two other quick political stories to cover before we get into the virus block. One is exclusive. Proud Boys leader was prolific informer for law enforcement. And when you see who goes to jail and who's out free and who's getting paid and who's getting screwed, you go, you're working for somebody, aren't you? You know, and wow, this is a super hot story today. Exclusive. Proud Boys, and this is Enrique Tarrio, someone we've tried to interview on the show a couple of times. And a couple people try to set us up with him, and haven't been able to get him on. Maybe now we know why. Maybe he doesn't want to do an interview with someone who's going to subject him to scrutiny. And I would again say, Enrique, come on the show. Come on Adam versus the Man. You know, we're going to be tough. We're going to be fair. We're going to be respectful. And we're going to have a good time with a fun conversation, because I can't say, at least now necessarily, with this specter of a whole other, behind the scenes story being raised, that I support your work, but I appreciate the significance of it. I want to, give you this platform, and I'll have this conversation with you. But this first paragraph goes: Enrique Tarrio, the leader of the Proud Boys extremist group, has a past as an informer for federal and local law enforcement, repeatedly working undercover for investigators after he was arrested in 2012, according to a former prosecutor in a transcript of a 2014 federal court proceeding obtained by Reuters. So this is coming about because in fallout from the January 6th insurrection, false flag, fake bullshit insurrection, everything that the Proud Boys have been up to lately. And they're not, are they extremists in their views politically? No. I mean, the word extreme kind of loses meaning at some point. But, to be more precise, like, are they fringe? Not even. The Proud Boys represent a significant chunk of the mainstream sentiment of the American public. So why do I connect this to the Silk Road story? Is that when you see two stories like this together, and by the way, the third story in our little sort of political YouTube movie trailer news block to kick off the subject matter for the show today is from Politico: DC National Guard deployment extended through end of March. Remember, there's nothing more permanent than a temporary government program, and we're only going to have troops at the Capitol for a little while, I'm sure. Now, I don't pretend to think that that's going to go for a long time, that we're going to have troops defending the Capitol like we do today. But the reaction, I think, does underscore a certain point. And I think we should be reminded all the more strongly now, and be reminding ourselves and each other to stay away from confrontation, to stay in love, to de-escalate, not to escalate. And even if you want to celebrate any kind of righteousness of what happened on January 6th, it was a confrontation. It wasn't a peace treaty or a negotiation or a settling or innovation or progress or invention. It was conflict. And that always holds humanity back from our potential of living in harmony. So putting all these together, I hope you guys see the thread and can come to appreciate, as I do in looking at these three stories together, that a lot of what we see as major political reality is the product of the swamp, string pullers, whether it's in the corporate world or political world or the intelligence community. What an arrogant name for them to call themselves, by the way. The people who are really good liars, they call themselves the intelligence community, and or the military industrial complex, all of that. And I don't know, so many thoughts to complete in this, but man, even to go to the big picture for just a second before we get to comments here, Jim, I would use this analysis on the American Revolution and point out that it may have been its fatal flaw. That because the American Revolution was conducted by military resistance, as opposed to, say, the techniques of Gandhi or MLK, right? That because the American Revolution was born in violence, the motivation for the new illegal coup with our current constitution was in large part to collect taxes to pay military debts. That might have been the key animating force that led us to the constitutional coup and the perversion of Americanism into militarism that has gotten us to exactly where we are today. That fatal flaw has now become a widening chasm, a growing divide, a polarization, a perversion of the warrior spirit and the American spirit to militarism and subservience and obedience and wearing 3 masks at a time, if that's what Dr. Fauci tells you to do. And so I would say we must learn the lessons of history and have a new kind of revolution, one that is a revolution of love and harmony and de-escalation, not of conflict. So, Jim, what do we have? Any wisdom, any questions or ideas to share from the comments or yourself and all that?
Well, yeah, we got a couple. Well, firstly, I was just gonna say, after watching that trailer, I was curious as to how they're gonna spin it. You know what I mean? Because Hollywood always takes a narrative, and it's. I saw good and bad in that one trailer. I saw, like you pointed out, it looks like they're going with the narrative. DEA agent was setting him up, which is leaning towards the truth. But it also looked like they were painting him out to be like he really was going crazy and taking things too far, and his girlfriend, like he was getting angry at his girlfriend for trying to stop him. I mean, I don't know how. Right. I don't know what really happened.
The trailer,
so I don't know.
Yeah, the trailer portrays Ross Ulbricht as sort of naive to the bigger picture of what he was playing with and the kind of money he was getting into. But then it also portrays him sort of as the good guy that way and the victim of this. And it portrays the DEA agent, although like it really, and who knows, maybe the movie covers this, I'll reserve judgment. Right. But I've seen Hollywood do shadier shit, and like that narrative could be flipped where it shows Ross as deserving of his punishment, and it shows that the DEA agent was going to extremes to catch a really bad guy and stop this moral hazard of thousands of people being able to get drugs online. And right. I remember, I'm good friends with Lynn Ulbricht, Ross's mother, who I described as the patron saint of activist mothers. And she's been on Adam versus the Man at least a few times, and I've helped her out with some fundraisers for Ross. And she said when she first heard the term Silk Road murder mystery, she said, well, the real mystery is why would the government want to shut this down and deny thousands of American children whose parents were getting drugs that were saving them from seizure disorders like cannabis and CBD even. Remember, this is going back over a decade, right? Why would they want to murder them by keeping them from the medicine that is saving their lives?
An excellent question. So, we got a super chat here in Biffidum, $2. Adam's right in the loser Olympics. It's the loser Olympics.
Yeah,
Adam's right. It's the loser Olympics.
Yeah, politics. Partisan politics is the loser Olympics. It doesn't matter if you win or lose. You're all losers anyway.
Our friend Peter Yapel says, Is it a swamp or has it fast-acting quicksand?
Okay. Should we deconstruct the metaphor of the swamp as but yeah, is it quicksand? See, no, I have to reject the quicksand metaphor here, because if it's quicksand and it's like we're falling into it, I don't think we are. It doesn't square with my larger narrative of human progress, and that government isn't becoming a deadlier trap that more people are going to get sucked into. If anything, it's losing power. It's weakening in its overall relevance in our lives, and that's something to celebrate. So, is it quicksand? Maybe if it's sucking itself up, it's sucking up, unfortunately, some of the elements of government that provide good services. Like, I'm not against roads, I'm not against welfare. I'm just against paying for those with stolen money and using them as the excuse to steal from people as the government system operates. So, but no, it's like, who won the 2020 election again? Oh yeah, drugs. So the government is like giving up that racket. I see, in order to preserve its central racket of the monetary system, it's going to resort to more desperate measures. And to this, back to this Enrique Tarrio story quickly. There, and I don't think this one article or reveal is a smoking gun for Enrique by himself or by itself. They're talking about a transcript of a 2014 federal court proceeding obtained by Reuters. They're talking about this Miami hearing where a federal prosecutor, an FBI agent, and Tarrio's own lawyer described his undercover work, said he'd helped authorities prosecute more than a dozen people in various cases involving drugs, gambling, and human smuggling. Now, there are two sort of excuses for Tarrio in all of this, right? One, that he was under duress himself. And I don't think you can ever judge someone in a situation like that, or demand that someone have courage, or demand that someone make a sacrifice when there's a gun being held to their head to protect you or to protect someone else. And that's what government is. And maybe Enrique was conducting some victimless crimes. Perhaps he was set up for something. Perhaps prosecutors went to him and said, "Look, you're going to work for us, or you're going to do 20 years. What's and you're going to be kept away from your family and everybody who loves you and depends on you. But you're going to help us set people up. But don't worry, these are bad people. We're going to use you, and you're not that bad, but we're going to use you to set up the really bad people." And then next thing you know, he's helping government go after people for victimless crimes. And even if it is as bad as that, he might not be blamed. He might be blameless here, right? But then it says undercover work, and that calls into question the sort of entire validity of everything he's done with the Proud Boys, because he's at least subject to the influence of all of these federal agents and law enforcement officials and prosecutors who have dirt on him at some level and can control, thus, the Proud Boys. And this is kind of the weakness of any organization that's essentially open source, right? How do you get Enrique Tarrio elected within the Proud Boys to be the leader? Well, have a few dozen undercover agents whipping for him, building him up, being his team, and he's the one with a full-time staff of volunteers? That's great. And they're all undercover agents. What do you know? So I think keeping that in mind, especially as we enter this beginning of the middle of the end of the war on drugs, but also this phase of acceleration, right, of collapsitarian fantasies coming true. There's a lot more than meets the eye. There's more happening behind the scenes. And again, to connect it to the National Guard story, never believe what government tells you is the reason for what it's doing, because that is almost always a lie.
Well said, almost every time. I got a question here that I'm sure a lot of people are dealing with, so maybe you can help them out. It's kind of a general question. ADVRX says it's great to say no vax, but if your employer requires it to come to work, I'm not sure what to do. I do not want the vax, but I am pretty sure they're going to require it sooner than later. What's your advice to the millions of people in that situation?
Yeah, well, we're going to get into that in the COVID block today. So I'm just making sure our guest knows that we're a little behind schedule today. But about the vaccine and like going to work, we think of the vaccine as this marginal thing, right? And in a sense it is. It's just like, well, would you take a job if you had to pay taxes? Well, I wouldn't, but well, if it was enough money, if it was legit, if it overcame the weight of the costs of working for government and my contribution to the evil of the world by working for government, or even just paying taxes, having withholding where you're sort of indirectly working for government half the year, by the way, as it adds up for the average American, right? And you go, well, for me, I do everything I can to opt out of that, right? And I encourage everybody, be an entrepreneur, work under the table, deal in cash, whatever you can do to avoid withholdings from a paycheck so that you're not working directly for, or sort of one level indirectly for government that way. If you get one of those jobs, you got to fill out a tax form, you got to show ID, you got to have a name badge, whatever, all these other things. If you're going to park in the employee parking lot, you got to have a license plate and a driver's license and be registered and all. And in a sense, the vaccine is just one more thing. But I think it does cross a significant line of violating your body. You can't work unless you give us control of your body chemistry, your biology this way. That's a different. I mean, if they said, hey, we're going to do a digital cavity search every time just for security to come in the building, we're going to say, yeah, we're going to get in there. Would you say, oh, it's just one more thing I got to put up with to go to work? No, you'd be like, whoa, no, I'm going to find another job. I'm not going to get a finger in the poop chute every morning to go to work. That's going to wear me down eventually, if not, traumatize me the first time. No, not dealing with that, right? But if it's this vaccine, there's this cloud of propaganda around it to make you think like it's not a big deal. And I don't want to overblow it. It's not like, oh, slippery slope. You let them give you the vaccine. Next thing you know, they'll I don't know, be taking over your brain with microchips in order to work or get a government. No, it's not that. And in and of itself, it's not that big a deal. But just weigh it in that bigger picture for you. Like what? I'll tell you this much, right? Like if there was some bullshit corporate job that someone offered me because I had just the right look, I looked, it just so happened to look like this computer jet, whatever, and they were going to pay me, $1 million a month to do bullshit TV commercials for some crappy product. I would do, and I had to get the vaccine, and I had to pay taxes. I would do it because I know that if I had that much money, I could take it and use it against the system more effectively than it's going to use that money that it's getting from ripping me off and controlling me for that period of time. We live in a world saturated by statism. It is the dominant paradigm. So we all have to make compromises and sacrifices and weigh those things subjectively. So I hope that's enough to help people make that decision for themselves. Jim, is there anything you'd want to add to that? You know what? Actually, there's some, before we get to our COVID block, Elijah John Gitzarelli, our campaign manager for Kokesh for president, I'm just going to read this from him for just a minute here. He said on Facebook, I'm not going to get the vaccine no matter what. It's not because I'm scared of it. In the Army, I got injected with a whole bunch of junk. It's because I oppose the very concept that's being pushed by so-called scientists. This isn't to keep people safe or to save lives. This is an attempt to line the pockets of billionaires. Each dose of the vaccine costs about $35, and you have to get 2 doses, so that's $70. Parentheses in before. I understand that I probably wouldn't need to pay this money myself. There are 330 million people in the United States, so it's $23.1 billion to be made just in the U.S. That's why every time you turn on a radio or the TV or even YouTube, all you hear is how important it is for you to get your vaccine. I'm not opposed to people making money, and if they're saving lives, even better. But for the vast majority of people, including me, getting a vaccine really won't be saving any lives at all. If I worked or lived with elderly or at-risk individuals, I would get the vaccine because that would be worth $70. This is the only thing that I disagree with Elijah in this post. I would say It might be. And I would have to reassess, you know, what is for those individuals that I care about, what is, you know, at risk, and does it make it worth me putting my health at risk to take the vaccine? So, you know, he says, as it stands, I don't see any real value in getting it. That said, if you have COVID, I'll give you $5 to cough in my face. The sooner I get it, the sooner I can spend time with my grandmother. And I got to insert here, and oh, sorry, Elijah, in the propaganda, there's going to be new strains. Had it, gotten over it? No, you're not safe. Vaccine? Ooh, better. We'll let you in. Still not safe. You're going to need another vaccine, right? So anyway, he goes on to compare this 200 million people who don't need the vaccine. Even if it's only 100 million, it's $7 billion. And here's just how Elijah skewers the hypocrisy of this whole thing. If you want to save lives, there's much more effective things we could be doing with that $7 billion. That is the point of this, right? To save lives. Some of the lower estimates say that $7 billion could end world hunger. 9 million people die of starvation every year. I bet with $7 billion, we could save way more people from starvation than we could from COVID. How about $14 billion if we go with my original estimate of 200 million people? Note, in this scenario, 130 million will still be getting the vaccine, and most people who can be saved will still be saved. Now, that's just the United States. What if healthy people who don't spend the time with at-risk people decided to forego the vaccine around the world? How much money would that be? And I just mentioned hunger. What about tuberculosis medication? There's so many things. The UN estimates that 69 million children under the age of 5 die from preventable causes every year. If you want to save lives, we should be doing many other things before buying COVID vaccines. Sorry, but I #follow the science. Jim, any thoughts before we wrap this up and get into our actual COVID block for the day? Jim?
Sorry, yeah, I was making sure I just emailed the guest our link because I forgot to do that when you mentioned the guest. I was like, oh yeah, I'm supposed to send him the link, so I did send him the link. So sorry about that.
We got to wrap this up because we're going to be getting to him late. And I've got. Did you see how many news stories we have for this COVID block? It's ridiculous. We're going to get it out of the way and we're going to contain it. COVID will remain contained on Adam versus the Man. Jim, before you play the animation to kick off this block, any final thoughts or comments?
No, that should do it. There's lots of people watching today, so the comments are just scrambling my brain. I tried to get Mercedes, but she was busy today. That's why we have no controller of the comments today. So it's super random.
Can I publicly say what? So we have like 3 producers / co-hosts on this team. It's amazing, and we are this like weird backup to the backup to the backup, and it's just me and Jim now. So super chats today, probably the only way you're going to get his attention. But CJ, internet just out. And you're like, what? Yeah, South Dakota, right? And then Jim filling in is doing comments and producing because can I say what Mercedes is dealing with too? I'll leave it like I'll put it like this. One of the consequences of living on grid and being hooked up to city sewer is that sometimes the city pumps sewage backwards. Yeah, let's leave it at that, shall we? All right, Jim, anything else to wrap up and play the animation? Let's get to our COVID block.
Animation and then go to it.
All right. This is not. I suppose on this episode we've already said enough about that virus, which shall not be named, that we really need a heavy-handed disclaimer. I am not a doctor. I am a comedian, parody artist who says nothing true about reality ever, and everything I say about anything, especially about COVID-19, the coronavirus, the keratovirus, should be taken as nothing more than parody, especially if you're watching this as staff at YouTube. So the Daily Star has this headline. I told you it was going to get worse. China rolls out new anal swab tests to curb COVID outbreak in Beijing, and the internet shut down after this headline because it was overwhelmed with memes about poop jokes and COVID and butt sex. And yeah, this is, you thought that and you know what, as a libertarian who's been around this movement for long enough, when I hear people say stuff like, they're coming for your buttholes, eventually that's where I'm the one at the back of the room going, no, don't let him speak. No. And then, years later you go, what? Trump's been president, and now they're going to try to stick something in my butt, in my wire. No. But yeah, this is it. The rapid invasive test inserts a swab 2 to 3 centimeters into the rectum. So that's not bad. I mean, it's like a micro penis, and rotates it several times. Penises don't do that, though. It is currently being used in Beijing to curb the spread of a new COVID outbreak. Oh, that's what it's being used for. China is now using anal swab tests to curb the spread of the coronavirus in its capital city of Beijing, according to state TV. This comes after small local outbreaks in the country led to China shutting off many of its northern cities. And now it is rolling out mass testing projects with a twist. Yeah, literally with a twist. Before, these tests had mostly been carried out with nose and throat swabs, but rapid test involves a swab being inserted around 2 or 3 centimeters into the rectum and being rotated multiple. There's an instructions picture with this article with like, I want one of these. Like, this is going to be just museum piece one of these days. As in, what did we do? Remember when COVID came and we all? I don't think this. Maybe this is just a Chinese thing. Thank you, Jim. There it is. There's. Are we allowed to show this graphic on YouTube? I hope so. This is medical documents we're just parodying here, right? But someday in the future, we are going to look back at the COVID crisis, and we let government violate our butts. That's going to be what we look back on, and we are most embarrassed about. Mark my words, and then sit and spin. Now, I've said this coronavirus has been used as the excuse for people to do things that they wanted to do anyway. Did you want to print $1 trillion? Did you want to stay home from work? Did you want a 6-foot radius safe space like Eric Cartman from the South Park Pandemic Special, walking around a little 6-foot pole with a 6 flag on the end, little pennant there? Did you want to, are you a government official who wanted to shut down dissent? Well, now we have this story from apnews.com citing pandemic. Greece bans protests for a week. Yeah, just like that. And it's not that, I'm sure this will be temporary. You're right. We'll give those back to you as soon as we're done using them. Greece's center-right government on Tuesday imposed a week-long ban on public protests attended by more than 100 people, angering left-wing political opponents. The decision, announced by the police as part of a campaign to contain the coronavirus pandemic, carries fines of up to 3,000 euros for individuals involved in organizing the rallies, and 5,000 euros, that's $6,070 for protest groups. So it's not really that they've taken your rights away so much as confiscated them and offered to sell them back to you at a premium. The ban follows student demonstrations against plans by the government to police university campuses. Clashes between protesters and police have broken out at some recent rallies. Now, we get to more stories of these later in our block today, but first, from Yahoo, this is Bloomberg via Yahoo. AstraZeneca's vaccine testing stumble draws investor lawsuit. And there's so many headlines like this right now, but there's some important things to keep in mind when looking at this for yourself, and it's a subjective decision. No one can make this for. Should you take the vaccine or not? Should you risk your health to protect against a virus that's probably no threat to you anyway, or less than the vaccine itself? And I just, all right, I don't think I needed to deconstruct the scenario any further. But the question here is, because there are lots of obvious reasons not to take the virus vaccine, because the virus is a greater threat, because the side effects might be worse than the virus. The cure is worse than the disease. I mean, I've been saying that since the beginning of the lockdowns and shutdowns and Trump's national state of emergency. The cure is going to be a lot worse than the disease in the final accounting. Why do you think when it comes to the shutdowns and mask mandates and all of that leading to these disastrous consequences, that it's going to be any different with a vaccine rushed to market where government has specifically told you, hey, take this vaccine, and if you get hurt, tough shit, we're not going to allow you to sue the manufacturers. They assume no liability for any health consequences that you may experience from their product. So to AstraZeneca, PLC was sued by a pension fund on behalf of investors who say it suffered losses because of flaws in the company's testing of its coronavirus vaccine. For much of last year, the Cambridge, England-based pharmaceutical company was touting strong progress on the development of its traditional style vaccine and announced that it had signed contracts to provide 400 million doses. But in November, questions emerged about the vaccine when the company released initial test results. Among other things, experts and health officials faulted the testing for lack of data on the vaccine's effectiveness for those 55 and older. They also raised questions about results from one trial that found the vaccine 90% effective for subjects who got a half dose, but only 62% effective for those who got the full dose. Yeah, and this just, there's so much in these vaccines and the testing and in the rollout. And, you know, speaking of the bigger messaging, what they're trying to get you to one of the ways they're getting people to think that they've got it or that someone around them has got it is we have seen, and we've covered so many stories like this, it's almost passé, but they add new strains, new variants, new symptoms to watch out for. And I'm not a hypochondriac. I'm very confident in saying that. But when all of this was accelerating earlier on last year, there was and the shutdowns were starting here in the United States. You know, we were on the campaign trail. We were going to conventions. And all of a sudden, we had to say, "Oh crap, now we're going home." Oh, did you have the sniffles? Did you have? Oh shoot, maybe did you have it? And you know, we got caught up in that before we were like, hold on a second. And it took us a while. And I think that means all the more you got to be very patient with others who don't have the luxury that you do to listen to someone like me rant about this for hours a day. But World Europe, this is the straitstimes.com, changes to tongue, hands, or feet may flag coronavirus, study shows. And one of these was, you know, that 1 in 10, let's see if I get the number, 1 in 10 spotted unusual signs, or 1 in 4 patients said they had noticed changes to their tongue, while 4 out of 10 spotted unusual signs on the palms of their hands or soles of their feet. But there's also going to be things like, 1 in 10 noticed that they had the sniffles. 1 in 10 noticed, whatever. All right. So now that everybody's paranoid and thinks they've got the virus, whether they have it or not, and this is, man, we have covered more than I even cared to, all the problems with false positive tests. So we know that a lot of people who are being told they have the virus don't actually have it to begin with. So MSM or Bloomberg via MSN has this next headline about the vaccine. Vaccine rollout skips TSA screeners, air traffic controllers. And you're like, wait a second. They're essential workers performing critical safety work and have been assigned priority designation to receive the coronavirus vaccine. And yet tens of thousands of airport security screeners, air traffic controllers, and federal accident investigators who must report to work in spite of the virus ravaging the United States haven't gotten the shot and aren't sure how and when they will. Okay. Now, obviously, there are going to be hangups in any kind of major government distribution program such as this. But I thought we could take comfort in the fact that the guinea pigs for this virus and the first major rollout were going to be federal employees. They can't even protect their own right. All right, moving on. How is this being rolled out? The Washington Post via MSN.com. Philadelphia let college kids distribute vaccines. The result was a disaster, volunteers say. Philadelphia is home to some of the most venerated medical institutions in the country. Yet when it came time to set up the city's first and largest coronavirus mass vaccination site, Officials turned to the startup Philly Fighting COVID, a self-described group of college kids with minimum healthcare experience. Chaos ensued. Seniors were left in tears after finding that appointments they'd made through a bungled sign-up form wouldn't be honored. The group switched to a for-profit model without publicizing the change and added a privacy policy that would allow it to sell users' personal data. One volunteer alleged that the 22-year-old CEO had pocketed vaccine doses. Another described a free-for-all where unsupervised 18 and 19-year-olds vaccinated one another and posed for photos. Yeah. Surprise, surprise. And this is just one example of, I want to say, relatively petty profiteering over this vaccine, but this is very petty compared to the vaccine manufacturers and all the people involved at the highest corporate and government levels of this rollout. So, France24.com, 5 or 6 doses, controversy over Pfizer vaccine vials. Of course, yeah, they're trying to squeeze doses out of vials. If you've ever had to pull an injection with a syringe out of a vial, you can't get into the corners. You can't, if you got to turn the vial upside down and pull it out, and the needle sticking through the membrane, whatever's below the surface, the hole of that needle isn't going to get. And so now, there's this the new scramble in getting government money for the right equipment is making sure that we have these special syringes. And they're niche syringes with low dead space, so less of the vaccine is wasted in the syringe too. And so what they're talking about is that they have these special vaccine syringes with very low dead spaces, but they are, what are they calling these? Low dead space syringes are niche products, and there's traditionally been minimal market demand based on healthcare provider needs. But now that we have to squeeze every dose of the vaccine out of every vial, we have another excuse to upcharge governments all around the world for billions of dollars. Now, Reuters, in terms of the implications of government policy, no COVID block on Adam versus the Man would not be complete without refreshing you on the threats represented from government using this as the excuse to take your rights. Now, this from Reuters, people must explain travel reasons under new British border measures. That's right, Britain announced new measures to reduce travel on Wednesday with a requirement that people wishing to leave the country must fill in a form to explain why they are traveling, as well as introducing new hotel quarantine stays for some arrivals. Oh, Britain. What happened? Did you lose World War II to the Nazis? And now it's papers, please again? How did that happen? Oh, yeah, blame the coronavirus. Now, could this possibly come to the United States? Next headline also from Reuters, U.S. actively looking at mandating COVID-19 testing for domestic air travel. This is already a thing in Hawaii. We had to take tests to get to our honeymoon within 72 hours from a Hawaii government-approved testing partner. And so now the Biden administration is actively looking at expanding mandatory COVID-19 testing to travelers on U.S. domestic flights. Yeah. A senior Centers for Disease Control and Prevention official said on Tuesday. But you want to get to the greater ridiculousness of where we're at with this. Look at this. Summit.news. Experts now say Americans should wear 3 masks. Why not just a full hazmat suit? Yeah, and they're saying that a double mask gets you what? I guess from 50 to 75% efficiency, and then a triple mask is 90%. Not only is there so much wrong with the science, but even the math here. Now, who knows? Maybe it follows some weird curve trend where the third mask is really the sweet spot, where now you only have a 1 in 10 chance of getting the virus when you would have otherwise. Yeah. Okay. Where is this coming from? Citing researchers at Virginia Tech, CNBC says that Americans should consider wearing 3 face masks in order to protect against the spread of COVID-19. After Dr. Fauci asserted that wearing 2 face coverings instead of 1 would be more effective in stopping the virus, CNBC's Contessa Brewer went even further. Quote, "The experts keep telling us that wearing masks is really about protecting others from ourselves in the event we are contagious. But, if other people aren't wearing their masks or if they're wearing them improperly, we need to protect ourselves. she said as she began to put a mask on. And you know, it's so dumb. Experts say you can double up with a tight weave. Ugh. Why not just face shield and let's let the suckers identify themselves and wear bubble masks around and suffer the consequences. And this is just one of the most offensive things about this as the coronavirus is that it's not enough for people to say, hey, let's make health decisions to protect ourselves and those around us and our businesses. No, they're saying, you have to do this to protect me from you. And it's this weird mythology around the science of this thing that's made that narrative possible. But if you wear the full shield, you stay home, you are 100% safe. You don't have to go out at all. Let those of us who want to face the risks of life, let us leave our homes, and the rest of you can go hide back in the Matrix. Now, in terms of policy, CNS News has this analysis. Biden's 2021 COVID-19 bill costs more than the entire 1981 federal government. Yeah, the $1.9 trillion relief bill that Biden wants Congress to pass now is his response to the pandemic will cost Americans more than the entire federal government costs in fiscal 1981. Now, of course, you got to adjust for inflation, blah, 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 blah. But yeah, that's the scope of what's happening right now financially. Again, follow the money. So another consequence, aside from all the things that we've covered about suicide, drug addiction, people dying from other effects of isolation and the stress, the strain, the economic despair that so many millions are experiencing right now, there are health consequences as well. And not even just the stuff we've already covered so many times about hospitals having the interference of government in terms of their resource allocation, being less able to provide services and save lives. Shocking, right? Now we have this from dnyuz.com. With all eyes on COVID-19, drug-resistant infections crept in. As COVID-19 took hold over the last year, hospitals and nursing homes used and reused scarce protective equipment, masks, gloves, gowns. This desperate frugality helped prevent the airborne transfer of the virus. Yeah, right. Okay. But it also appears to have helped spread it. And by the way, this is all right. I'm just kidding. All right, I gotta finish this one. But it also appears to have helped spread a different set of germs, drug-resistant bacteria, and fungi that have used the chaos of the pandemic to grow opportunistically in healthcare settings around the globe, as if they have some conscious anthropomorphic way of. No, this is a failure of the healthcare system because of government intervention. But perspective, right? Newsweek with this headline: COVID lockdowns may have no clear benefit versus other voluntary measures. International study shows. Yeah, it wouldn't be a COVID block without Adam stopping to say, I told you so. The numbers are going to come out. Then the patchwork response between jurisdictions of governments is going to show that the policies were effectively ineffective. A study evaluating COVID-19 responses around the world found that mandatory lockdown orders early in the pandemic may not provide significantly more benefits to slowing the spread of the disease than other voluntary measures, such as social distancing or travel reduction, if any of that's even true. Now, what's next with the vaccine in terms of policy rollout? They might want cats and dogs to get it. The Sun has this headline: shot in the bark. I'll stop singing. I got to make fun of these dumb headlines. Cats and dogs may need to get COVID vaccine to stop spread of virus, scientists say. Yeah. It's not enough to vaccinate all the people and make billions of dollars. Yeah, this is all right. I'm sick of COVID. I got this COVID vaccine. Moderna is working on a booster shot for a new South African strain. Merck ends COVID vaccine program, cites inferior immune responses. Now, this headline I mentioned yesterday from the Daily Mail: Brussels threat to UK vaccine supplies after it demands Pfizer informs them of non-EU exports as regulator plans to reject use of Oxford jab for over 65s after Germany claim it is only 8% effective in pensioners. Well, that's their headline. But buried in that, yes, they were pushing a vaccine with, and for seniors, that it only had an 8% effectiveness rate. Now, how are they enlisting corporate America and all this? United Airlines CEO calls on companies to mandate COVID-19 vaccine. That from Reuters. Let's see. Oh, by the way, Florida offers to host Olympics if Tokyo backs out, according to state official. Because Florida man don't wear no mask, don't care about no virus. But yes, there is a chance that Tokyo might not be capable of holding the Olympics because their COVID is just making it impossible. In terms of fighting back, we see two examples. And in the first one, and this is from CNN.com, an illegal nightclub in Lawrence, Massachusetts was busted. This is violating COVID orders, of course. And one of the things that they're saying anytime this kind of thing happens is like with the next story from New York, NBCNewYork.com, NYPD finds dozens drinking inside club with heavily fortified door, owner arrested. And it's, because there was a dangerous level of carbon monoxide because they had why do you drive people doing things that are not crimes, victimless crimes? If you turn them into crimes, you drive them underground. These are the kind of hazards that you're going to get. No, it's like, it's like parents telling their kids, I'd rather you drink at home for the first time. I'd rather you do it safely and be able to tell me about it. Yeah. Same thing with government. What's the next way they're leveraging this vaccine aside from in order to run or go to a nightclub? LA schools chief, kids must get coronavirus vaccine to return. Yeah, okay. And as we mentioned yesterday from the Washington Post, this headline, wealthy couple chartered a plane to the Yukon, took vaccine doses meant for indigenous elders. If you can afford that, it would have been easier to quarantine indefinitely than to go to that length and expose yourself to that risk in order to get the vaccine and take that vaccine out of the waiting shoulder muscle of some indigenous elder. Really? Really? Well, for all of you who have taken things a little bit too far, enjoy your anal swabs. As far as I'm concerned, everybody who is overreacting and freaking out and causing us to have what can only be described as a cure far worse than the disease, leading to thousands of suicides, overdoses, businesses shutting down, trillions of dollars being ripped off by the super rich from the rest of us. Y'all can sit and spin. And that's our COVID block. And now, graciously waiting backstage for me to at least pretend like I have said everything that needs to be said about that virus, which shall not be named, our guest, Mark Victor. But first, we have a super chat. Let's see. Some guy writes in for $5, thinking of doing a live action troll today. Going to go around town wearing my gas mask with a mask over the canister. Would a face shield be too much? Yeah, go for it. I think there's so much of that. It's so this coronavirus hysteria has got to be so easy to troll. But yeah, take pictures. I'd love to see how people react to that. All right. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, joining us today from near Phoenix, Arizona, Mark Victor of Attorneys for Freedom, and my favorite candidate for office is a libertarian who I hope will be representing us as our U.S. Senate nominee for the Libertarian Party in this next election cycle in 22. A guy I got to see and hang out with a little bit this past weekend at the Arizona annual. It's not really a convention. It's the league. Oh my gosh, I don't even want to have to explain it was our annual unofficial, official, super official, check the government boxes convention. We got a new chair. We got to hear from Mark Victor, and Mark had a great time. I hope you felt the love and support for your upcoming campaign. And live and let live.
How you doing, brother? It's been great listening to your rant about coronavirus. I got to say, I was really enjoying that.
Good, thank you. Oh man, anal swabs. Anal swabs. Did you? Okay, so do you remember this? Like, because Mark Victor is someone who's been around this movement. How long would you say you've been an active libertarian, Mark?
Probably close to 30 years now.
Okay, so 30. Yeah, that's 30 years of hanging out with libertarians. And there's always some guy in the back of the room going, "They're coming for your buttholes. you know that, right? They're coming for your buttholes. They're gonna have a virus that doesn't really kill anybody, but then they're gonna use it for this, and they're gonna make you have a vaccine to go to school and fly on a plane. And we were all going like, dude, that guy's crazy. No, don't listen to him. That can never. Reality show star could be no, and sometimes it's me doing, oh my god, and then we should have listened to those guys.
I think this whole Corona thing is really an interesting discussion. I mean, we could probably spend hours and hours talking about this. But one of the things that I find so fascinating, and it's something I mentioned the other day when I spoke at that gathering, whatever it was the other day, is an inability really to agree on facts. If we could sort of get facts that everybody agreed on about Corona, right? How transmissible is it really? Do masks really work? Does social distancing really work? What is the death rate for each particular group attributed specifically to Corona? Each one of these things is a point of debate, right? Because there are people who will tell you absolutely positively masks work. And then there's people who will tell you absolutely positively masks don't work. This isn't a libertarian or a freedom issue. This is a facts issue. And so that's what makes this topic so difficult, and so many other topics as well, because it really depends on where you get your news, where you get your information is a function of what you believe. And we got to fix this problem. This is a growing problem, because if we can't agree on facts, how do we analyze, even with the same principle, right? Even if we can convince people, talking to my libertarian friends, I'd say the non-aggression principle. Talking to everyone in the live and let live crowd, I would say the live and let live principle. How do we convince people, even if they accept that principle, what the answer is if we disagree on the facts?
Yeah, well, so Mark, about that, I'm 100% with you. I want to go one level deeper on this, because as you first started saying, about the lies on Corona, or not the lies, but the confusion, the legitimate confusion on Corona. There is a legitimate confusion, but I also would make the case that it's deliberately engineered. That the people who control the data, the people who run these government institutions, and I've called out Trump from the beginning here, saying, why would you order the CDC to conduct deliberations in secret? And it's misdirection and deliberate confusion by criminals to take advantage of you. It's not that society has a problem with facts or science. It's that we have a high level of trust that is totally undeserved for government and authority in such a way that a criminal can infiltrate even legitimate systems of distributing or disseminating or processing information and inject confusion, and that's enough to step in and rip you off.
No, totally. And the other thing that I think, in addition, that kind of goes hand in hand with this problem of not being able to converge on facts, is this question of overgeneralizing different groups, right? Like when we talk about the government, like this is sort of one big instrument of whatever, but it's not true, right? There is no real government. Government is just sort of this artificial construct. It's the people who are working there. And I definitely don't want to generalize all of these people. There's probably many different groups, right? I'm sure there is a group of people who are in the government, I don't know what the percentage is, who absolutely positively want to capitalize on this and make as much money as possible, and will put out any information that will help them reach that goal. Then there's another group of people who work for the government who believe, correctly or incorrectly, they believe things like masks work, we're in the midst of this huge pandemic, we're all going to die, and social distancing. And so they are acting, it's important to remember, they're acting in good faith, right? These are people.
Yeah, and even then, it's worth pointing out, most people in government acting in good faith are doing mostly good things. Like I've been watching Parks and Rec lately, and it's like, I hate that Parks and Rec is a government department, but I want a city with parks, like I want these events to happen. I want all of this. So yeah, it's just most people in government are doing good things less efficiently, less effectively than they would if they were serving people directly without government in the way.
I think that group breaks down into different groups too, right? Because first of all, we don't all agree on what is a good thing, right? Because take the Corona thing, for example, you're balancing here safety and liberty. people balance this differently, right? People evaluate risks differently. People are in different risks positions, which is why even people who are trying to do the right thing for the right reasons, because they're speaking for everybody, and this is the problem with the sort of one-size-fits-all solution that the government says all businesses need to close or all this or whatever. I certainly like the solution a lot better that lets people decide. To me, in a perfect world, what we would do is get accurate information out into the world. There is a coronavirus. Here's what we know about it, blah, blah, blah. And then you decide what risks you're willing to take. And so how does this play out in the world? Well, if you're a business, you can decide, shut down. I'm going to shut down and close. You can also decide, I'm going to stay open, but everyone in my business is going to wear masks and everybody coming in is going to wear masks. Or you could decide, I'm going to ignore the whole thing and no one's going to wear masks and I'll stay open and people can come in without masks and everybody is just sort of assuming the risk. I like that option better, because then people who are in different risk positions can do different things. People who are in the same risk position but evaluate risks differently. Like one of my lawyers, Andy, he likes to jump out of planes with a parachute on because he thinks that's fun. And he evaluates the risk really low and the reward really high. Different calculation on that.
But you better enjoy it before government takes that over for you. Now, Mark, if you don't mind, I want to tease ahead and let people know that we are going to be getting an update on Live and Let Live and how Mark's vision for that has developed and how that was received at the Libertarian Party of Arizona convention this past weekend. But we've also had Mark on before in this age of coronavirus to talk about the case of a restaurant that he was defending for against I forget what was the exact, what is it, the city action to shut down a restaurant or fine them for letting people eat at their outdoor tables.
Yeah, and let me first say that this is a case of mine that we did pro bono. Goldwater Institute sent it over to us. Sometimes we take them just for the freedom of the thing. This was one of those cases. And the reason I can talk about this is because my client signed a release that lets me talk about it. So what happened was, this was during the time period where the governor made a decision for everybody and said that restaurants can remain open, but only for takeout. So people can pick it up and then they leave. And that was really about what it said. And so my client, who was the owner of Euro Pizza up in Fountain Hills, was doing just that. And she was busy. She makes great pizza up there. So she was, selling pizza. And people, of course, were taking the pizza and then walking around and finding places to sit. As it right borders a park. So people were sitting on park benches. Some of them had taken her outside tables, which she had specifically closed, turned over chairs and sat down. And people were just sort of milling around eating. And so the deputy sheriffs came up and advised her that she can't do this. She's got to tell these people to leave. Her response was, in essence, look, I make pizza. I'm not a law enforcement officer. I'm not going to tell them to leave. So she got cited for violating this section. And what's interesting about it is we would have fought this on the merits, and we had a good argument that she wasn't violating the order. But instead, we went to exactly what the governor's authority was and the statute. We determined that there's a very good legal argument that Governor Ducey did not have the authority to tell businesses under our statutes that they had to close. So we filed a motion to dismiss the case, specifically saying Governor Ducey's orders do not apply to private businesses. And you know what they did? Instead of litigating that, they just dismissed it because they didn't want a judge to rule on that. Imagine if a judge had agreed with us.
Well, so when you say they dismissed, I just want to be clear on the mechanism. You're saying that the prosecutors just dropped the case, or did wasn't okay? So
my client got charged with a criminal offense, a misdemeanor, for violating Governor Ducey's order. So the prosecutor, who I'm sure didn't make the decision, this was a higher up decision, said, we see this motion, and sometimes they make strategy calls like this, right? We don't want an order that specifically says, imagine that, Governor Ducey has no authority to tell a private business what to do, which I would have loved, by the way. Fine, you want to close state facilities, you're in charge of those, no problem. But they dismissed the case against her rather than have the judge rule on that, which I thought was very telling.
Yeah, because they don't want to let you set a precedent that would cause the governor to have to curtail his intervention here.
Yeah,
so
no, I was going to say, keep in mind, you know, I don't like to fight these fights really on this front, right? Because even if we win, okay, the legislature can just change the statute tomorrow, and then that's the end of that. So we haven't really accomplished what I want to accomplish, which is get people to change hearts and minds.
Right, and you want a victory that says, you know, you can't carry through full with the prosecution, but in a way you created a negative precedent, or you sustained the negative precedent that says law enforcement and prosecutors can harass business owners over stuff like this, right?
Well, they charged her and they wound up dismissing the case. And so it was a victory for her, but it was a victory just for her. It wasn't a big statement to the state. And so, you know,
but even then, it was a defensive victory that would have been better to be avoided altogether, or handled with a, you know, hey, get off my lawn, cops, you know, rather than, well, you got to hire a lawyer, you got to go to the Goldwater Institute, you got to get Mark Victor involved, you got to go to court. That's a loss. You are still the victim of government harassment, and you paid in hours and stress and energy, right?
No
so
question.
What I wanted to get from you here, Mark, on this topic is sort of a follow-up in terms of, you know, what is the precedent now? How have things been in Arizona? How are you following this around the country with cases like the ones we covered earlier today with the Massachusetts nightclub and the underground bar / club, whatever the kids are calling it these days, in New York City? And you know, how are things going on that legal front in general with COVID and businesses?
Well, the short answer is not very good. As you know, you took the test when you flew to Hawaii. I was the first lawyer to sue the governor of Hawaii when the governor of Hawaii started issuing proclamations. But lawyers can bring lawsuits, and we did. We brought a good lawsuit in federal court. Ultimately, for strategy reasons, we wound up voluntarily dismissing that, and another group decided to move forward. They had what they thought was a more favorable judge in the case, and then they lost the case, and they lost it on appeal. We then filed in state court and lost it in state court, and now we're on appeal. So the only point I'm making here is lawyers can bring lawsuits, and that's great. But until somebody wearing a black robe cuts an order that says, yeah, this is unconstitutional, we don't get anywhere. And so I can just tell you this, Adam, you and I have been involved in this fight for freedom and peace for an awfully long time. As we said at the beginning, I'm 3 decades into this now. And what occurs to me is I want to use my time most efficiently. And also, I don't like little victories. I want to win the war here. I want to go big. And so what really matters, you know, thinking about it carefully for 30 years, what occurs to me is what really matters at the end of the day. If we want to, we can fight every single issue separately if we want, and make alliances with groups that don't agree with the fundamental principles. Like, take the marijuana issue. We're not really aligned with that group of people that says marijuana is not dangerous and therefore it should be legal. That's not our argument at all. That's why I wrote an article that says, stop arguing marijuana is not harmful. Not because I think it's harmful, because I think it's not the right argument. Who cares if it's harmful or not? It's the principle that's important here. So
win the precedent. Yeah. Win the deeper principle. Win the precedent.
Yeah, and the war here is not going to be won in court, nor is it going to be won at the ballot box. Where it's going to be won is where all of these are always won. It's where the American Revolution was won. You got to win it in hearts and minds of people. We got to get more people who think about the world from the same principle that we think about the world from. Because if they're using different principles, like say, for example, the principle they're using is something along the lines of, the role of government is to use force to reorganize the world to make it in the way we think is best for everybody. So a lot of people believe that. Now, this isn't necessarily...
If only half of them had the guts and intellectual integrity to state it so directly.
It's in essence what they say. And it's like I said in my talk the other day, I'm going to imagine for the sake of this comment that Bernie Sanders actually believes what he says. And let's say he's a good guy and he really wants to help people and improve the world. So I would say to a Bernie Sanders guy, okay, yeah, I agree with you. We should help less fortunate. We should make sure everybody in our country has health care. And these are great goals. We all want to live happy and peaceful lives. The point that I would make to him is you're putting moral goals out there. And moral goals, we have to inspire people to achieve. Because if
Yeah.
not, then everybody's got a different position on morality, right? Some people will argue smoking marijuana is immoral.
Well, Mark, I got to interject here because I, as a libertarian, would like to think that we can persuade people. We don't have to inspire people. We can persuade people with logic and reason, but that's delusional.
I use them the same way, whether we're persuading or inspiring people.
Right, no, I know. Well, no, my point. I just, it's using logic and reason on someone who is irrational and emotional, is pearls before swine. It is a futile effort that is unappreciated for someone who's, and you do what, and I just want to make this bigger point always, and I know that you're an appreciator of this more loving, humane perspective, is that when someone is being irrational, when they have been overcome by fear or trauma or misinformation or anxiety or some other personality disorder or some other actual mental health event that's throwing them off, you're not going to win them over with logic and reason. And to get them to the point of that higher state of mental function, we have to love them and support them and provide that encouragement and really that inspiration for people to say, look, you don't have to wallow in an animalistic state. You are capable of a rational life as a human being that takes full advantage of these faculties we are blessed with. You do not have to succumb to fear. And to get people out of fear, it's not reason and evidence and persuasion, it's inspiration and love.
Yeah, and I see everything, Adam, sort of in a bell curve, right? And there's people who we can do that with. And then there's other people who are hopeless, right? There's nothing we can do with those people. So the best we can hope for that situation is that the law is calibrated such that they can affect us, right? Whatever they think.
I thought you were talking about the John McCains, because our friend Ernie Hancock used to love saying, we just have to wait for all the John McCains of the world to die. Well, we waited long enough that he's gone. Let's.
That's why.
No, you're right.
The best.
No, and for the people who can't engage at that level, as you say, this is the role of leadership in society, and for us to recognize that what we are doing, we're not leading in fashion and technology and design, but in social organization and ethics and safety. Yes, we as libertarians are taking a leadership role.
Yeah, and I think we can do this, right? But we haven't been effective doing this over the years. It's because we don't lead with the best thing we got, which is the principle. That's the only thing we got.
Let live.
There is nothing more to a libertarian than agreement on the principle, which is why you'll remember I got that question at the event the other day by a woman who wanted to know how I felt about cannabis. And I told her, who cares how I feel about cannabis? It's not relevant to anything. It's like how I feel about ice cream. It's not, you decide whether to use cannabis. You decide whether to use ice cream. The only thing I care about is that whatever the hell you do, you don't interfere with me and I won't interfere with you. We'll do this live and let live thing. That's the principle that binds libertarians together. As I've said for years, when somebody tells me they are a libertarian, assuming they're being truthful about this, the only thing that tells me is that they know about this non-aggression principle thing and they like it. They adhere to it. It doesn't tell me anything about anything else.
I think you're missing the one critical reason that cannabis legitimately deserves to be violently opposed, at least if you're a defender of the racket, if you're a bootlicker, because the most dangerous side effect of smoking cannabis is that after we've been lied to about it for so long, you cannot smoke pot and not realize that government is totally full of shit. It's a gateway drug. It's a gateway to freedom. Now, Mark, I am 100% with you on your core point. We shouldn't be arguing for we have a right to do it because it's safe. No, we have a right to do it because we have a right to do it.
Because we're
A. And Helen, my friend who asked you that question, happens to be a great champion of cannabis. And I do think, while your underlying point is true, when we're talking about reaching people at that emotional level, there's also a practical level that we miss as libertarians. Because we want to talk about high-flying principles, we don't talk about what puts food on the table. Or as George W. would have said, you're trying to put food on your family. And cannabis, it really is that gateway and that powerful drug. And I get your point. And what I'm really encouraged by is the live and let live thing. But I would also, I guess there's a limit to how much we can discuss on the air here. But Mark, I know that you can appreciate the mind expanding effects of this particular drug.
Well, look, people should do whatever they want if they're competent adults. I wrote probably about 15, 20 years ago an article entitled Legalize Methamphetamine with an exclamation point at the end. And I was asked repeatedly, Mark, can you at least put a question mark? And I said, no. So that's how the younger Mark Victor used to proceed like that. That would be how do you feel about legalizing meth would be my first question out of the box. And I realize now that I'm slightly older, it's probably not the best approach. There's not one word in that article I would change. I back every single thing that I said. I do think meth should be legal, but it's not the right place to start the discussion, nor is the non-aggression principle, because when you talk about highfalutin ideas, the average person says, huh? Non-aggression? What does that mean? You've already lost them at that point. But I do
and this is the brilliance of the slogan that you put front and center of live and let live, is that live and let live, as most people understand it, is a live and let live. Four-word explanation of the non-aggression principle that's sort of more direct and more practical for people. Whereas if you say, well, we're trying to be precise in a political ethics philosophical sense here, they don't give a damn. That's us nerdy libertarians talking amongst each other, sending everybody else away to go be the cool kids, right?
So really what I want to do is put the live and let live principle out there, and I don't want to get distracted by other stuff. The things that are fun to talk about, how big should government be? Do we need it at all? What is the definition of government? Somebody hit me up with the true definition of socialism the other day. Does this really involve a coerced thing? Maybe it does, but why would we get bogged down in that? Who cares? The only thing I care about is whatever you want to do, whatever economic system, whatever moral thing, whatever you want to smoke, I don't care.
As long as it's voluntary, as long as it's ethical.
Live and let live rule. Because I can almost everybody, if I ask them the question, the first question out of my mouth is, how do you feel about live and let live? Almost everybody, hell yeah, they love it. And then I can even get them further, right? When we say, okay, it sounds great, but when the party's over, let's talk about what it means. Well, I don't know. What does it mean? Well, if it means anything, it's got to mean, if I'm hitting you over the head, I'm definitely violating the rule, don't you think? Everybody says yes to that. And then it doesn't take me any time to get them to coercion or fraud. They don't want to agree with that either. Some of the non-lawyers, it takes me a little bit of time to get them to the substantial risk. But I've come up with a really good way to explain that, because self-defense really is the best example of this. You don't have to wait until somebody's fist hits your face before you're justified in hitting them first. That's because when they're like this and they say, I'm going to punch you in the face, they're already violating the live and let live rule. But that's it. So once I get them in agreement.
Well, as a libertarian, I want to pick this apart, Mark Victor, and talk about imminent threats and legal standards and at what point. But yeah, everybody gets that inherently. And this is, as a libertarian, I have always been how to call people to apply what they know as basic ethics consistently to government. And if you make basic ethics the non-aggression principle and imminent threat and all these sort of more technical, ethical, philosophical terms, you're already irrelevant. Hey, live and let live. How do we apply that to government? Now you got a conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I say the same way we apply it to everybody. Why should government get any special treatment? It's just a collection of people. I mean, it seems pretty easy to me, and it's a nice conversation to have. You know, libertarians want to get down into the weeds about, like you say, what does imminent mean? Who decides? You know, those are hard questions. I deal with them when I speak at the gun show. Self-defense questions. They're very difficult questions. There's a lot of gray area. That's what a jury's for, right? So at the end of the day, not every question is easy to figure out. Implementing on the ground level is not super, super simple, but we've already got pretty good rules to figure out, like, for example, what's a competent adult? This can be a very hard question. There's people in the world who someone alleges are not competent. Some other people say yes. We bring in psychologists. We have hearings. We try to get a fair judge. Wouldn't it be great if the judge was actually operating on exactly the same principle, right? The importance of trying to figure out if this person really is a competent adult. Because if they are, then they're in charge of making their decisions over their lives. If they're not, well, then somebody else is in charge of making those decisions. And that's it. That should be what the role is. And until we get more people in the world, and I think the optimistic point here is we don't need everybody. We're not going to get everybody. We don't even need 50%. I think if we could get up to a third of the people, we probably don't even need that much. If we could get a third of the people, and by the way, all reasonable people, in my opinion, if they understand what we're saying, would agree with this. Because in order to disagree, what you got to say is, I think it's okay to be an aggressor, which is by definition not a reasonable statement. You can't be reasoned with. You're about force, right?
Hey, do you remember when Stefan Molyneux was a libertarian and he used to say that's the against me argument? And it's a great rhetorical device to say, well, you know, if you are advocating for this policy, would you be willing to use violence and force against me for disagreeing? Like even in war, to say, okay, so you want to go to war, okay, but are you willing to steal from me and lock me in a cage if I resist because I disagree and want to just peacefully not be a part of your war and not pay for it? And they go, oh, well, when there's someone standing in front of you, it's also got that very beautiful humanizing effect.
Totally. So I think this message is one that once the light bulb goes off and once they understand it, and this is our challenge, this has always been our challenge, just simply communicating what it is we're trying to say. And that was my point the other day, and maybe I could have made it better than I made it, but we need to deliver the message in a box that people are happy to open up and take a look at. If we deliver the message in a box that people say, oh, I'm already, forget about that, I saw the box, I'm not interested. If we deliver the box in a package that says, here's why we should legalize methamphetamine, there'll be people who will be intrigued and will read it, but most people won't look at the message. So there are things that we need to change if we intend to try to convince a third or so of people on this principle, which means we got to present the principle front and center in a way that's easy to understand. We need to trim off all the irrelevant arguments. And just to get back to what you were talking about, because I thought maybe you wanted to talk about Corona, and I was going to make this point, we need to trim out all of the factual disagreements because the world is filled with factual disagreements. So what I like to do is what lawyers do. We use hypotheticals. I say, okay, well, let's imagine the facts are like this, and this. Now, how do we apply the principle? And we can also say, okay, imagine the facts are otherwise. They're like this, and this. How do we apply the principle? Because we really, there's no escape from having to converge on facts. And we got a real problem in the world because we're all living in these echo chambers, right? If you're on social media, they know what pisses you off. They know what gets you excited, and they want to keep sending stuff like that. That's how and that's how we get good people. And again, I am not intending to generalize everybody who was at the Capitol on the 6th as good people, but there were definitely good people in that crowd. How do we get good people to go to the Capitol and break in and be so upset and call themselves patriots? Well, we do that by feeding them a bunch of information where they feel, correctly or incorrectly, and I'm not taking a position right now on this, correctly or incorrectly, that their election was rigged, it was stolen from them, and somebody is running their country now not based on sort of American principles. These are good people, right? If we really believe this, I can see that. We're not putting up with that. So we got to, maybe it was rigged, maybe it wasn't rigged, but if we could all converge on that, then we could act appropriately. Because I think almost everybody would say if the election actually was rigged, and truthfully, Trump should have been elected, and because of the software or voter fraud or something else, that's the reason we got Biden, then all reasonable people who like democracy would say, okay, we got to do something about this. But if it wasn't rigged and there actually were more people, then everybody who likes democracy says, well, Biden is the legitimately elected president. But if you got two groups and they're diametrically opposed here because one watches Fox and one watches MSNBC, they don't agree on facts, we're not even reaching the non-aggression principle or the live and let live principle. That's why a commitment to facts and truth, whatever the facts, whatever the truth is, if you told me tomorrow and convinced me that Corona, it's real and it's very communicable and it's really deadly, okay, well then we can reason down that road. If you convinced me the other side that, okay, this thing's more like a flu and unless you're really old or you've got comorbidities, this thing isn't really much of a problem, then we go down a different road. but we got to be committed to what the facts are. And I think we got to be humble too, because I'm not a scientist. I haven't done any studies. I haven't looked at the data. So as I get older, I become more humble about what the actual facts are. I'm not going to get swept away with a mob who all believes the facts are one way or the other. I think we owe it, just to be civilized people, to listen to the facts. Maybe the facts are different than we actually think they are.
All right. Well, Mark, I want to ask, because you got this great website at liveandletlive.org, how you see the relationship of the specific branding and mechanisms that you've created versus a bigger movement and adoption of this slogan and messaging and this conceptual communications approach with the party, with the movement. But before we do that, let's see if we got any comments or questions from the audience. Comment Jim Freedom, if you want to jump up here, you want to just throw some comments up. What do we have for Mr. Victor this morning? We have comment Jim Freedom doing comments and production, definitely with his hands full.
And he's
Hey Mark, how you doing? I've been enjoying the conversation. It's been a great one, man. You guys are on point. I'm gonna be honest, I haven't really been going through the comments because I've been making sure that your websites and everything are ready to be promoted. So I got a nice new banner for you for liveandletlive.org, so people can join that.
Fantastic. Thank you for doing that. Yeah, well, so while we're talking here, maybe I'd throw a few points out there. I love libertarianism. I love one thing about libertarianism, and only one thing, which is the non-aggression principle. That's all there is to libertarianism, as far as I'm concerned.
Come on. You got to love the beards, too.
Okay, I don't know if you call this a beard or not, but whatever it is.
I should have just said facial hair.
Adam, I just hit puberty not too long ago, so I'm still working on the beard thing. But so I love that, but I think that the way it's been rolled out could be dramatically improved. And also, libertarianism is a freedom movement, and I love freedom, but freedom's never been my goal. Peace has been my goal, and I see peace and freedom differently. I see freedom as a necessary prerequisite, right? Because you're definitely, if we're initiating force against each other, there's no way we're at peace. But just because we're not initiating force doesn't mean we're at peace. I actually want to promote peace. I'm a peace activist. And so Live and Let Live is a peace movement. And where libertarianism has traditionally talked about a free society, I think the world has changed now. And I know a lot of libertarians are really scared of the idea that we could do something globally. But I think we need to, because there are threats all over the world now that actually affect us. The coronavirus is just one example of maybe, well, I hope not, but we may have a parade of such threats that come from around the world, because we got to move with the technology. And the technology is such that everybody in the world now is effectively your neighbor. So we can't think small anymore. We can't think free society. We got to think peaceful world. And so I really, really am very focused and committed to putting the principle, the one thing that matters, which I now call the Live and Let Live principle, putting it out there front and center. It's the first thing I talk about. I don't talk about it. If you say, hey, Mark, how do you feel about weed? I'm going to bring it right back to the principle. I'm going to say, well, let me tell you, I'm a guy who believes in live and let live. And live and let live means this. And I'm going to lay out what the principle is. And then I'm just going to simply apply it. And I'm going to say it has nothing to do with whether I like weed or don't like weed, or who cares how I personally feel about weed. I may try to talk you into smoking it or try to talk you out of smoking it. None of that's relevant. If it doesn't violate the principle, legally speaking, they should be left alone. Morally speaking, take any position you like. Who cares? And I think if we market it in this way, I think that we have a really good chance. And now I got some good evidence, because I can't wait to tell you about things going on around the world right now. I got a group in Africa that's so excited about Live and Let Live. I can't even put them in my regular monthly meeting anymore. They got to have their own separate meeting, because they got so many people over there so hungry for this Live and Let Live idea. And these are our brothers and sisters who are really living in horrible conditions as a result, always of the same thing, because they're living in a society where the rules are not calibrated around the Live and Let Live principle. People live better to the extent the rules are calibrated around that principle, the legal rules. And so that's the other thing. We got to do a better job of explaining the difference between a legal rule and a moral rule. They're hugely different. They're both really important. I don't mean to say moral rules aren't important. They're hugely important.
Mark, do you like the distinction of the law as written versus the natural law?
No, I don't like that at all because I think it makes it a little too squishy for people. We don't all agree on what the natural law is. And lots of people say all morality comes from natural law. Some people say no, it comes as a result of contract principles.
To me, the natural law, the way I use that term is that it's an embodiment of the non-aggression principle in a practical set of legal standards. And I get that might not make it effective messaging at all.
I tend to agree with that. I think you can make a very strong case that the natural order of things is such that every living entity seeks to act in its own self-interest and claims an ownership interest over itself. Animals do, humans do, and then we can build it all out from there. Like somebody, the lady with the pink hair the other day, very, very astutely.
Karen Ann Harlos, our national secretary and historical, I forget what her title is, but libertarian historical leader. She's the one. Official historian of the Libertarian Party. I think we can call her that.
She's brilliant. And as she very, very astutely pointed out, there has to be a theory of property that we're not really paying a lot of attention to, that we smuggle in. And my response back to her was exactly how I feel about it. I agreed with her. There is a theory of property in there. But most people already tend to agree with this, right? Most people don't say, yeah, I don't claim an ownership interest over my own body or possessions, or I don't think we should have ownership ideas about the world. This is nonsense, right? Because if you eat, then you claim an ownership interest, at least in the food that you're eating, because you're using it to the exclusion.
No, I'm just borrowing it from the earth, and to the earth it shall return. All right, let's go to some comments. Jim, you got any questions or anything from the audience?
Got a question from Mark Jason Walker. I would like to ask Mark how Mark feels about filing an affidavit with your local government, reversing the contract that they are offering to the citizen and making them liable for any injuries or damages. I'll leave that up for you if you need to analyze that.
Yeah. Well, okay, the government's going to say, we're not offering any contract for anything. I don't know what you're talking about. And even if they were, they would say you have no right to opt out. And so there's lots of different other issues, and what injuries and what damages and how are we causing it. Again, there might be an interesting discussion in here, but this isn't, to me, the kind of discussion that's going to get us to where we need to be.
Yeah, so Mark, let me try to turn this into a broader, more helpful question, because what Mark is referring to here, Mark Walker, our commenter, sounds like a very specific technicalitarian strategy, and I use that term. I hope if you don't, anyone in the audience doesn't know this, technicalitarian is sort of calling the government on its technical errors. You've got gold fringe on the flag, therefore you don't have jurisdiction, or you didn't prove jurisdiction, or actually, but that Mark Stevens actually uses that to legitimate success. The sovereign citizen movement, for all of its flaws, fundamental flaws even, does a lot of work of trying to apply these kinds of strategies for people to assert their sovereignty. Back to Mark Stevens. What he uses this very effectively for is getting people out of traffic violations, licensing citations, things like that. And oftentimes they come down to make yourself more trouble than you're worth kind of strategies. Whereas Mark is playing on the higher level of actually call them on the technicalities that threaten the credibility of the system. And that's what they're trying to defend. So, Mark, of all of these sort of less, and by the way, I've used these to success myself in a number of cases, beating 4 felonies in Texas by raising the specter of the religious defense, which is technically you can't arrest me on drug charges because I claim that that's for my religion, right? And it worked in my case. So of all of these, Mark, do you have any comments on that genre of legal strategies or any favorites that you might have?
Yeah, I strongly oppose those kinds of strategies, because these are the kinds of things that I think don't make the people who have really good arguments to make it, don't make them sort of worthy of listening to by the people who should be listening. They just look at this and say, this is BS. I'm not listening to this stuff. And it doesn't get us where we want to go, right? It might get you out of your traffic ticket because you were such a pain in the neck. You raised some crazy
or drug felonies. Or maybe drug felonies in Texas.
Yes. But I like to see a world where the law doesn't outlaw this stuff to begin with, where Adam Kokesh can take out his firearm and hold it up in the air in Washington, D.C. and still be left alone because he's not violating the rule. I'd rather focus on that than focus on how can I get Adam out of some technicality. Now, of course, this is important when the government's coming for you, right? And we've both been charged with crimes. We both had the government coming for us. So when that happens, you got to get out of that mess. And that's what I specialize in. But as an activist, I want to change the laws so we don't have to waste our lives finding ways to get out of things that should never be against the law to begin with. Like, that's the big piece of the puzzle I want to focus on.
Well, maybe let me see, because these strategies are a whole spectrum of various things, but there is one that I think you might maybe appreciate more, because there is some value to saying, well, if we can't control the political mechanism and change the law, might it be much easier to just make enforcement untenable? And if this never take a plea strategy, right? At least always negotiate with government, at least never take the first plea offer, right? I don't
agree with that either. There are occasions when
okay. When I've taken a plea, it's not never ever. I've come to get away from that slogan myself. But Mark, that's a huge way they get away with enforcing so many unconstitutional laws is by bullying people into taking plea deals. And if enough people just simply said, "Oh, just take it to a jury trial," it would take the criminal injustice system to a grinding halt, would it not?
It would, but it would also put lots of people in prison for a long time. And so, like if you said everybody charged with distribution of methamphetamine, nobody should take a deal. There's a lot of people. Many people are going to go down for life sentence.
Someone's got to be on the front lines and fall on a sword here or there if we're going to play that game, huh?
I just don't like that approach. I'd much rather do it right. Let's do it right. Let's convince people. We have a good principle that people will agree on. Why don't we use the principle and put it out there?
So Mark, I did this with your speech on Saturday about making fun of the more colorful messengers, but if I may suggest a slight rewording here to be more inclusive and positive in the way that you just leveled that criticism of my general category of technicalitarian arguments, to say that you see better strategic opportunities, because I'm pretty sure you're not really against people defending themselves against government by whatever means necessary and may be effective.
Well, if you limit the statement to defending themselves against government when government is bringing an unjust prosecution against them, I completely agree, right? Because much of what happens in the criminal justice system are prosecutions against people who actually violate the rule. All murder prosecutions, rape, burglary, robbery, those kinds of things. We should give people fair trials, but those are all legitimate acts. Could we improve the justice system? Sure, we can always improve it, but that it's not perfect isn't really a good indictment against the whole process. Like, we need a process to go after people who actually violate the rule. We want to give them fair trials. There's lots of dispute over what exactly is a fair trial. There are many rules that come up, Adam, as I'm trying a case where I say, yeah, this could be a reasonable rule, but I also see the other side. There's no sort of absolute, this is the right way to do a fair trial.
All right, and Mark Victor and I will be returning for a 20-hour special episode of Adam versus the Man, as we explain all the various wonderful mechanisms of law, justice, and dispute resolution in a free society without the government monopoly over such functions. But until then, Mark, I want to wrap up with giving you a chance to talk about the movement globally and messaging wise, and the open source nature of what you're presenting at liveandletlive.org, and then check in with the comments. So Jim, if you might have a couple of those ready for us. But first, Mark, with this website, you have your podcast, you have your branding, you have an organization, but at the same time, you are really genuinely launching this as an open source thing, as a movement, as like, hey, look at this phrase that we already love and use, live and let live. Let's apply it bigger, right? So how do you balance those things? What's your bigger vision for this? And how does that relate to what's going around the world right now?
Well, I guess my bigger vision is I'm tired of just having conversations. Look, I love having conversations in my backyard with other libertarians to deal with little nuances about things. It's super fun. It's one of my favorite things to do, actually. But I really want to make a difference in the world. I'm a man of action, as I know you are, and I know a lot of people who want to tune in for your show. They're people of action, and they want to actually start moving the bus in the right direction. And so if you want to do that, then yeah, check out liveandletlive.org. If you like what you see there, and you will if you listen to this show, blast it out everywhere. Join the movement, get involved. I'm looking for leaders. We haven't even launched the movement yet. Because I'm trying to do this right, we're waiting till October 15 in Hawaii to launch it, October 27, as you see there on the screen in Phoenix. We have lots more conferences around the world we're working on, including Singapore, Australia, New Zealand, Italy, maybe Dubai. And so there's a big project here trying to bring a peace movement to the whole world. But one of the things that I want to point out that's very different than what libertarians talk about, because it's a peace movement, I got things to say about ethics and morals. And so, because in order to get to peace, you got to support some of this stuff. And I'm not ashamed of, and I will be happy to defend any of the what we call aspirational values. To be clear, we are not and would oppose trying to change the law to force these things on people. Things like open-mindedness, intolerance, involuntary kindness. Notice I say voluntary kindness as contrasted with involuntary kindness, which isn't really kindness at all.
Yep.
Reason and a commitment to facts and truth and aspirational ideas like let's increase the amount of human happiness and decrease the amount of human suffering. And civility, like we need to get back to civility. And I got to tell you, Adam, a lot of people who never heard of libertarianism and don't know anything about the live and let live principle, they're attracted and want to know more because they love that there's just a movement out there talking about these aspirational values, which of course gives me a great lead in to talk about the difference between aspirational values in the ethics world and moral world, which we are not trying to change the law on, and the legal world, which is a radically different idea, which is why we had a sort of the minimum in that world, because people don't all agree on moral views, but they do generally agree on aggression is wrong. And that's really all I'm trying to get across. And really all reasonable people agree with this. So the good news here is that if we succeed at actually getting this message out to the reasonable people of the world, and they understand what it is we're actually saying, they're totally on our side. And we're going to get everything that we want. We'll still have arguments about how to implement it. There'll still be people upset. Like you could imagine, Adam, two different groups of people. Maybe you could call them parties in the live and let live movement. There's the scaredy cat group who says, oh yes, everything is a substantial risk. Everything they're doing is creating problems and puts me at risk. And then the other group that, come on, none of this is a real risk. This is all kind of a BS. It's a minimal risk and we shouldn't be changing the law. Okay, these are legitimate arguments, and you might see communities with sort of different outcomes here. This is one of the things that you were talking about in your presidential bid, the idea of local control. And I think it's very important because, you know, like just like individuals, different communities have different risk tolerances as well. And so long as it's within reason, and this gets us into a discussion about federalism and minimum standards and things like that, right? And also bad faith constructions of the live and let live principle. There's people who will say, sure, I agree with that, but then I'm going to twist and contort it to try to do something else. We got to deal with that group. This is what judicial review is for. And I also want to say we've attracted a lot of great people to this movement. Judge Alex Kaczynski is a retired Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals judge, one of the most respected judges on the Ninth Circuit. He's recently read portions of my book, and he's helped me edit them, and he's drafted what I think is a very, very important thing, which is a new amendment, a new proposed amendment to the United States Constitution. This kind of comes from if you said, hey, Mark, if you could change the Constitution only in one way to make an amendment to try to impose live and let live through the law, what would you do? That's what this amendment is for, and it's in my book. You may be able to find it online too, I'm not sure, but my book is written. It's going to be out there soon. People can pre-order it right now. It's where I'm breaking everything down. But for right now, just go to liveandletlive.org, play the 2 1-minute videos. Hopefully after you watch that, you'll say, yeah, I love this thing. What's it about? And then play the 8-minute video that Charles Goyette narrates. And then it will put meat on the bones and really tell people it's pretty hardcore laying it out, what it means and how it works. then there's a bunch of FAQs on there if people have questions. We've started this new Peace Radicals show. I love the name. I'm a Peace Radical. And so the Peace Radical show is on there. We've got a bunch of episodes already. I intend to blast this out all over the place. And I'm looking for help. I've been trying to recruit this guy named Adam Kokesh for a long time now to get involved and start pulling in the saddle with me. I want to enlist a fellow brother Marine and warrior for freedom and peace. We all need to pull together. Whatever little dinky differences libertarians have among and between themselves, put that shit aside. And let's put the principle out there and let's start winning hearts and minds. We got a great argument here. We just need to put it out there in a way that our brothers and sisters who have never heard of what it is we're talking about, all they know is we're these crazy guys who want to legalize methamphetamine. They don't know what the principle, they don't know why we take that position. They don't know that we can also say, hey, you're an idiot if you take meth. It's going to ruin your life and this and that. And I try to persuade you all day long. They don't know that we can say both things simultaneously. And there's nothing wrong with that. We're not sending a message. The only message in there is you're in charge of you. If you want a free world and a free society and you're a competent adult, you're in charge of you. That includes wise decisions and unwise decisions, so long as they're only affecting you, right? That's the rub. So the principle is something that people will agree on. It's on us to get the good message out there where other libertarians and people who have called themselves, pro-freedom and objectivists and anarcho-capitalists and voluntarists or maybe even constitutionalists, where we've all failed in getting the message across to enough people. I think we could do this in the live and let live packaging because it's really very trimmed down to just the principle and the values. And I think I already know because I'm seeing the reaction that we're getting around the world from people who are just encountering this. And as I talk to people who don't know anything about where I'm coming from, I say, hey, how do you feel about live and let live? And you know that where that goes, right? People get excited. And when I throw out the values, don't you think we need civility back again and open-mindedness and just be tolerant towards each other? And because really, even if we get to the peace aspect of this, I really like that section of the Bible, and I'm not a religious guy, that talks about brotherly love. I believe in that. I think we're all on this planet for a short period of time. We need to enjoy life and get past all these stupid differences. We need to get past the racism stuff. Who gives a crap what color your skin is or what songs you sing or what foods you eat? Let's just love each other and get along and enjoy the fact that we're here and we're alive and just enjoy our lives and improve each other's ability to increase their happiness on the planet. I think those are worthy goals. Only a demented nutcase would disagree with what we're saying. They just don't understand what we're saying yet.
Well, Bart, you've got me on board with the messaging. And since you mentioned our presidential campaign to dissolve the federal government in a peaceful, orderly, responsible bankruptcy of decentralization, and getting to live and let live. To me, this is very much tied to localization, secession. You don't have a society that respects live and let live if you, your family, or any size community that you form voluntarily doesn't have its right to secede and live on its own and be allowed to live on its own how it wants. If that's not respected, you don't have that principle in effect. So when we get back on the road, it might be a couple of years on the bus, no Force One, it's going to be live and let live. I am 100% for this messaging. It is, to what extent people should be involved organizationally almost doesn't matter because all you have to do to be a part of it is to live it. I would say live and let live already encompasses anything that you would call libertarian, right? And it's creating is it a movement? Is it a messaging strategy? Is it a website and Mark's organization? Is it whatever you want it to be embodying this?
I want to encourage people to go to the website and join the movement. The reason for that is twofold. Number one, this way I can communicate with people and say, hey, we're going to have a conference, or maybe we want to have a rally or something like that. Number two, it'd be great for me to stand up and say, I got X number of people in my group. I'd like to come on your podcast and talk about living. Sure. So we got to have coordination here. But let me just leave you with this one thought, Adam.
Well, before you close, Mark, we do have one burning question that Jim wanted to share. Jim, you want to throw that up on screen here, and then we'll give Mark the last word? You want to read it?
Well, actually, the other question that I saw that I was holding on to was actually for another Mark that was in the comments. They were having a side question. Once I figured that out, it was stupid. But I have
Okay.
Mark. Sorry about that. It's a legal question. It'd probably be an easy answer for you. What would somebody that has already been screwed by the state, are they powerless to do anything? Like, say somebody got a DUI for marijuana in their blood, and they've already submitted to the state and got threatened and signed the plea bargain and been screwed, and they don't have their license and everything, and it's been a year and they still can't get their license because their life is screwed. Is there anything legally they can do to go back and say, hey, you guys screwed me from the gate, I never should have been robbed this way, or is this person just screwed?
No, actually, it's a good question. And the short answer is that, yeah, we have something in Arizona, and I'm assuming this is an Arizona situation. We have something in Arizona called a motion to set aside the judgment of conviction. And we do these all the time for people in that exact box. It fixes, to the extent anything really needs to be fixed here, because you don't lose gun rights or anything like that, or voting rights or anything, but you can clean up your record a little bit. But there's a more interesting question. Now that Prop 207 has passed, this has dramatically changed the law in some areas. And so depending on what the nature of that DUI is, if it's an A3 DUI, not an A1 DUI, where they've actually had a prove impairment, there might be an argument here under Rule 32 or Rule 33, because the law's changed a little bit there as well, to try to say, hey, since the law's changed, I should maybe undo my conviction. There's a lot that needs to be litigated that's not yet figured out. And so, yeah, there are definitely things that can be done. But I always tell people, who cares what the government thinks about you? If it doesn't affect your life, who cares, really?
Motion to set aside might be a more efficient way than an appeal for someone with a DUI situation to have restrictions immediately lifted, like lack or limit on a driver's license.
Yeah, and there may be some things, by the way, like Canada hassles people who have DUIs on their license. I don't know if setting aside fixes it, but that's a Canadian that's a question for Canada. But yeah, if you want to clean it up, we do these all the time for people. There's probably at any given time, I have probably 20, 25 of these in my office.
Awesome. Hopefully you'll get some more calls from people in Arizona today from it.
People can always reach me if they got questions. I love questions. I also like criticism. If you got something, Mark, I disagree with everything you said. I'd like to hear from you. Bring it civilized and I'll give you an answer back. It's just Mark, M-A-R-C, at attorneysforfreedom.com. That's our firm website, just Attorneys for Freedom, because I don't hire them unless they're attorneys for freedom. We're a bunch of pro-freedom lawyers at this law firm. But Adam, I wanted to leave you with just a thought, because you're talking about seceding. And imagine for a moment that
we're actually doing it. We're not just talking about it.
Fair enough. But imagine for a moment that we get our way, or that there's an iron-fisted dictator who is imposing laws, but they're all in accordance with live and let live, right? So in other words, the law is never going to bother you unless you violate the live and let live rule. What does it mean to secede under those circumstances?
Oh, you wouldn't care. You'd have no incentive. Why not be a part of a bigger voluntary collective? Absolutely.
What difference does it make is what I'm saying.
This suggests, different ways of how we get there. And to me, the declaring sovereignty micronation status is one ground up secession solution. But I agree with you. At the end, the only if my seceded nation here is private property, and I'm already respected at live and let live on that, then I don't really care what political organizations around me.
My response to that, if I was the iron-fisted dictator and you were under my claimed jurisdiction, and I get the message comes through that Kokesh has decided to secede from the nation, my response back is, I don't care. Kokesh can do whatever he wants. He still doesn't get to violate the non-aggression principle, right? He can say he's seceded, but if he starts shooting people or doing something, well, we're still going to deal with the guy, even if he has seceded or not, right? We deal the same way with other sovereign nations. So what difference does it make? I wouldn't care. Again, the only point I'm making here is that what really matters, no matter what we're talking about, the only thing that really matters is that we calibrate the legal system around the live and let live principle. If we get that done, we get everything we want. That's why I want to focus on that.
Excellent. Mark, thanks again for joining us today.
Dude, it's always a pleasure being on your show, and it's an honor, too. I really enjoy talking with you. Wish we got more time to hang out. It's always good to hang out with a fellow. By the way, I like that you still have the Marine Corps EGA on your coat the other day, because I got to tell you, I don't know that we've ever talked about this, but for me, I love the Marine Corps. I don't always love how the Marine Corps is used, like an AR-15. Sometimes they're used for bad purposes. Sometimes they're used for good purposes. But I don't get mad at the AR-15. To me, the Marine Corps is a fancy weapon made up of some of the best men and women in the world. And I'm a big fan. There's some shitbirds too, to be fair. But
the Marine Corps is the organization which perverts that noble warrior spirit of so many Marines into an attitude of servility and obedience to politicians. And that's why I will give no quarter to an institution that proclaims warrior values while actively squashing them.
Yeah, well, to me, it's the same thing, right? If you think of the Marine Corps as a weapon, which is really what it is,
it's deeper. It's the warrior spirit. It's the humanity behind it that it ruins. Mark, you and me could debate militarism for another 3 hours. You want to do that today?
I'll talk to you about it.
Your time is worth too much, man.
All right, brother. Hey, you let me know when you're coming down in my neighborhood, and let's get together. If I get up there in yours, I'll certainly get a hold of you.
Always.
All right.
Yeah,
brother.
well, we need an attorney to manage our secession for the Gardenia Sovereignty Project, to negotiate with this nation that we find ourselves surrounded by, and then to help us declare war on the United States so we can surrender and apply for foreign aid. That's the plan. I think it's a great get-rich-quick scheme that any lawyer could appreciate. Guys, I want to make sure you check out not only liveandletlive.org, but attorneysforfreedom.com, Mark's business, if you have legal business, consulting needs, or specifically cases here in Arizona, of course, both worth checking out.
Always a pleasure, brother. Thanks for having me.
All right, Jim, let's get through our promos, and then we're going to do a quick good news and sign off today.
Oh, was that a cue for me to come on and do promos?
Yes. Yes. No, my screen froze right as you were doing that last full screen anyway.
Okay. All right. That was good so far. Okay. So for promos, if you'd like to be a little bit deeper of a part of that interview you just saw or the conversation we have, then you can visit our AdamVersusTheMan.com website. And from there, you'll find a Patreon link. And you can sign up for anywhere from $1, $5, $10, even $50 a month. But $10 is what we call the sweet spot, because that gets you access to the Producers
If you want to
Club.
give us more money, we'll take it too. There's no limit on giving.
You can put in $100 or $1,000 a month. If you just hit the lottery or your Bitcoin paid off like you don't believe, feel free to throw some of it our way. We would be nothing but appreciative. We would announce it on the air. It could be a fun time. We'll do basically whatever you want if you donate enough. So have fun with that. But like I said, $10 gets you the Producers Club, and that's where you can see the backstage. We have a backstage chat here in StreamYard, but we have a backstage larger chat in the Producers Club. So you can ask questions there. You can be part of the conversation. You can suggest ideas. You can be a part of the show in a way that I have yet to see any other show offer a way to be a part of. I'll say that this is the only show that I've come across that offers this kind of participation direct participation. It's really cool. And I think it's catching on too, because it's getting bigger and bigger. It's almost getting harder to keep track of because it's getting bigger and bigger, but that's the fun of it. So after that, go back to the website, AdamVersusTheMan.com. Check out the shop there for all of our merchandise, anything from shirts, shirts with personalized logos on them. We got Freedom shirts, Adam versus the Man shirts, towels, backpacks, hoodies, hip sacks, beanies, coffee mugs, everything you can think of, even have underwear. Check it out. It's very awesome. After you do that, if you're into tobacco at all, if you smoke cigarettes, it's actually, I've heard, a better and healthier way to ingest tobacco is through cigars, because you don't actually inhale it. So if you're into that, visit cigarfederation.com, because they have every flavor that you can probably think of and some that you didn't think of for you to check out on their website. Order some of those, and if you use the promo code ADAM10, all caps, ADAM10, you'll get 10% off of anything you order there. So if you're into the nicotine or tobacco scene, try it this way. You'll love it and you won't regret it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jim. Wrapping things up with the good news today from goodnewsnetwork.org, this day in history. Or I should say, excuse me, as their website properly says, good news in history. January 27. It was 95 years ago today that Erwin Schrödinger published his theory of wave mechanics, a significant landmark in the development of quantum theory that won him the Nobel Prize. Yes, this is the Schrödinger who is famous for his cat thought experiment, whereby two possible outcomes occur simultaneously, coexisting as a combination of multiple states corresponding to different choices. And if you can't remember that, you can just watch that episode of Rick and Morty with the Schrodinger's cats all over the place in the uncertain universe we live in. And more good news on this day. It was on this day in 1785, the University of Georgia was founded as the first state-chartered public university in the U.S. and opened for students 6 years later. Probably because the government program, it would make sense if you're starting a school, you would start it and then it takes 6 years to get going. I don't know if that's actually good news in academia, that government oversaw another critical expansion. Lewis Carroll was born on this day in 1832, the author of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. And on this day in 1967, 60 nations signed the Outer Space Treaty to ban nuclear weapons there. They were all laughing amongst each other, going, nukes, we're going to have laser beam weapons and star destroyers. We don't need nukes in space. What? Okay, I'll stop. And on this day in 1973, the Paris Peace Accords officially ended the Vietnam War. Definitely good news there. On this day in 1983, Japan successfully linked two islands with the world's largest subaqueous tunnel, measuring 33.5 miles. Excuse me. On this day in 2003, the National Recording Registry at the Library of Congress enshrined their first selections. And I'm all for the historical artifact there. I'm such a fan of the Library of Congress's function that it's hard for me to oppose it being done by government. But don't worry, I'll find a way. On this day in 2013, Kathleen Wynne was named by the Liberal Party of Ontario to become Canada's first openly gay premier. On this day in 2010, Steve Jobs announced Apple would soon unveil the iPod tablet. And on this day, 265 years ago, the musical genius, child prodigy Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart was born. Finally, really good news. 77 years ago today, the siege of Leningrad in Russia was ended. After 872 days, the stranglehold by the German blockade during World War II was broken, allowing food and fuel to reach the city, now called St. Petersburg. And hopefully soon we can expect some kind of relief from this coronavirus madness and this dark cloud hanging over all of us. And with that, thank you so much for joining us today on Adam versus the Man. As always, mwah, peace and love, y'all. Choose happiness. Be excellent to each other.